Number 4, prevent these black groups from gaining respectability. Prevent them from gaining respectability.
Make them look bad.
Exactly. Make them look bad. Discredit them. And here, they list specific targets. Groups and individuals. So it's almost like a who's who of groups and people we've studied.
Is that the NAACP?
SNCC, the SCLC, the Nation of Islam, Martin Luther King, Stokely Carmichael, Elijah Muhammad. Each of these groups and individuals had a set of FBI agents out to undermine and destroy them.
But not the NAACP?
Not in this one, no. The NAACP was much more establishment than some of these others. Always, in the eyes of the FBI, the Black Panthers were the greatest threat of all. And were the Panthers in any way an actual threat?
In some places, but not all over.
No.
Yeah, but I think you'd have to say in some places absolutely they were.
Because they
right?
were community, first of all, it was community based. They were doing stuff for these black communities.
But then what do they become?
It got too, there was too,
Yeah.
they spread out too much and they couldn't control everything, so each one was their own individual.
Yeah, and some of them are violent and revolutionary,
Yeah.
right? No doubt about that.
Yeah.
Is the FBI interested in figuring out which Panthers are revolutionary and which ones are community activists?
Doesn't sound
No,
like
They
it.
are not.
they
No.
just want to go after the group as a whole.
So this is an example of the kind of petty, trivial, and effective thing that the FBI did. Remember we talked about how the Black Panthers and SNCC would fight with each other?
Mm-hmm.
So the FBI puts out a little flyer that looks like it's made by SNCC,
Oh, so,
bad-mouthing the Black Panthers.
so they are causing them to implode.
Exactly.
So they're the ones
And then the
behind
Black Panthers get all mad about this flyer that SNCC put out, but SNCC never put it
it.
out. The Panthers did. I'm sorry, the FBI did, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when members of SNCC and members of the Panthers wind up fighting or shooting each other, who sits in their offices and says, job well done?
The
The
FBI.
The FBI.
Dang.
So, and you think about that, right? And that is so kind of trivial and petty, but it was really effective. So that's a lot of what the FBI was doing. It was misinformation, right? Deceiving people, turning them against each other. But really, the more devious part of what they did through infiltration. FBI agents infiltrated every one of those groups. FBI agents of what color?
White.
No.
Oh,
Black.
Right. No white person can infiltrate the Black Panthers.
No.
That has to be done by a black person.
Mhm.
Right. So, black people working for the FBI infiltrated these groups.
And they knew exactly what they were.
Yes, and today it's so often, it's easy to look at these people and think of them as like some kind of traitor or something. But there were lots of black people who thought the Black Panthers are hurting black people's chances of making it in this country. So the black people who do this, in many cases, they think they have good motives. Whether, you can judge that for yourself.
Yeah.
But they don't think of themselves as bad people. So let's say that we are like the Rockville chapter of the Black Panthers. I don't really know if there was a Rockville chapter of the Black Panthers, but let's say we are, all right? And now a new guy joins. And he's got the look, he's got his jacket and his afro, his beret. He's got talk, and he becomes one of us. And as the months go by, he starts saying things at our meetings like, if we are serious about helping the people, let's go rob one of the white men's banks and use that white man's money to help our black neighborhood. Who is that guy?
Black Panther.
That guy's an FBI agent.
Secret FBI
Oh.
agent.
Yeah.
He's an FBI agent trying to get us to go break the law. And as soon as we make our plan to rob the bank, we're ready to go, and out of nowhere, the police show up and arrest us all.
It is a stain.
And do we ever see that new Panther again?
No.
He's
Nope.
not.
Nope, he leaves.
Dang.
So this is really the most devious part of what they were doing. And this brings us back to Fred Hampton, who, remember, was that 19-year-old leader of the Chicago Black Panthers. Well, one of his closest allies in the Chicago Panthers was working for the FBI. And he, another member of the Chicago Black Panthers, drew this floor plan of Fred Hampton's apartment, which he then gave to the FBI, which the FBI wanted so they could give it to the Chicago police. Because the Chicago police were planning to go kill Fred Hampton. The Chicago police raided Fred Hampton's apartment in the middle of the night, actually just before dawn. They kicked in the door and started shooting right into Fred Hampton's bedroom. How did they know where his bedroom was?
They had a
By
map.
the floor plan.
Because the FBI informant had drawn a floor plan. And the Chicago police fired hundreds of rounds into Fred Hampton's bedroom and murdered him in his bed. The last thing Fred Hampton did, he heard the door kicked open and he pushed his pregnant wife off of the bed onto the floor.
Oh, man.
And just because of the layout of the apartment, she survived. Because they were shooting through the wall into the bed long ways, and she's on the other side of the bed. He died, his wife and unborn child survived. The Chicago police, of course, didn't say they were going to kill Fred Hampton. They said they were going to raid a dangerous gang headquarters, and the gang members had shot at them first. A later investigation would reveal that that wasn't true,
Oh, all
and that
those
in fact
rules are
police
bull.
officers had planned to go kill Fred Hampton. Fred Hampton was one of the 100 Panthers killed in the first year of Nixon's presidency. Remember Law and Order?
Yeah. Mm.
Law and Order.
Oh, that scares me now.
And when all of this was revealed in the mid-70s, these were the cataloged illegal activities that the FBI then admitted to. Year by year, the number of times they illegally tapped someone's home or office or hotel,
Increase.
the number of times they illegally put bugs inside people's rooms, and the number of times they illegally opened people's mail. And these are all of the illegalities that the FBI admitted to in the mid-70s. Thousands and thousands of pages of these FBI documents that we've been looking at were released. But when those documents were released, many of them looked like this.
Try to hide.
And the FBI said, we can't tell you what's in this document or it would endanger national security.
Notice that saying Indian activities.
Yeah, you may be able to tell the FBI's illegal activities branched out
Mhm.
to all kinds of
Yeah.
people. Today, the kind of logical supposition that people make is that what's in the blacked out documents must be worse than what's in the documents that aren't. And that seems logical, right?
Yeah.
But can we prove that that is true or not?
Unless you have a special chemical that.
Exactly,
Unless
right.
you can actually see
I can't
the
see
wording.
through the blackout.
Yeah.
So many people today speculate that the worst things the FBI did, like if they ever had somebody killed, it's in the blacked out documents. But again, I can't tell you anything like that because I can't see through the blackout. So I would argue that it's kind of a logical conclusion to draw, but you'd also want to make sure you said that you can't prove it, right? I should say one more thing before we move on, and that is that at various points, well, first, Kennedy and Johnson were saying they supported the movement while the FBI was trying to destroy it.
Oh, were they aware that?
Yes. And at various points, both Kennedy and Johnson tried to restrain J. Edgar Hoover. But J. Edgar Hoover had been head of the FBI since the beginning of the FBI. And he knew about bad stuff Kennedy and Johnson had done. So when the President of the United States tries to rein Hoover in, Hoover just kind of delicately lets them know, I could let people know about what you've been doing. And what happens to their efforts to rein Hoover in?
It disappears.
They let it go.
They back off.
They back off.
Because they don't
Right.
want it.
So really, none of this ended until Hoover died. And because I don't like Hoover very much, can I just tell you that he also liked to wear his mother's clothes?
What?
It's not worth anything, just a little fact for you.
Okay.
So, despite the way it seemed like the movement kind of collapsed in on itself, since the late 60s, you'd have to say there's been remarkable progress for black people inside the United States. In fact, living today in the second decade of the 21st century, it would be stunning to think what the country looked like 50 or 60 years ago. It's just a completely different world. And if you can ever go talk to a black person who's 70 or 80 years old, they will tell you how incredibly amazing it is that the country is now the way it is. None of this is to say there aren't still incredible problems, but the progress has been tremendous. Look at this graph of black people elected to office. And you look at really all the 1900s, right? And then, well, there's the Voting Rights Act.
Yep.
Skyrockets.
It's been increasing.
When the Voting Rights Act was passed, there were 100 black people elected to office in the entire country. 15 years later, there were 2,500. And by 2008, there were more than 10,000 black men and women elected to office. Remember, though, that so many black people have moved to cities, right? In the wars and after. So most of these black elected officials are in city government. They're in the city council. And in cities where white people move to the suburbs, there are soon enough black people to elect a black person as what?
Mayor?
As mayor. Right. So in the 1970s, black men started becoming mayors of big American cities. Detroit, Atlanta, Philadelphia, New York. And black people became the mayors of these cities just as all the jobs were leaving the cities.
Oh, dang.
Because in the 1970s, America was de-industrializing, which of course we've been doing ever since. So that many of these big cities looked like this, with factories that were now just hollowed out buildings. So black people become the mayors of the cities just at the point where the cities are in the worst shape ever. And the fact that there were now black mayors and black city councilmen did not end the ghettos. Most of you are aware that if you go to any big city in America, there's a neighborhood of that city that is poor and more than 90% black. And the Fair Housing Act, the Civil Rights Act, has not changed that.